I really come to hate that, like that this meeting is being recorded. It happens on my account for whatever reason. Anytime I start a meeting, it automatically records. Drives me nuts.
Oh,
And I can't change that.
in the in your Zoom account, there's a box. No?
Nope. I've tried. I've tried resetting it. I've tried turning it on, turning it off, signing. I can't. I've gone to chat rooms and I can't turn it off. I can't.
Nice.
We all have our like IT like hexes
I
on us, right?
know.
Like cursed in different ways. My album, it's not a bad curse. You seem to be like really enduring the
Oh
brunt
my
of it this year.
Not good at all. I
Not
was on
good.
a call with, I just got off the phone with Yusuf a couple minutes ago before I started this. We can't replicate my issue, but he understands it's an issue because he was
Okay.
helping me troubleshoot it the first time.
I'm gonna let
So he
everyone
said,
in.
just keep an eye on it, and if it happens again, let them know because we may have to like escalate it to their the VPN team or something.
Oh gosh. Technology, technology. You gotta love it. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nate Ward. I'm the director of the Export Assistance Network at Cleveland State University. We're just gonna we'll give it a few more minutes to allow everyone a chance to log on here. So we appreciate you spending this portion of your afternoon with us. We'll get the program started momentarily. I think we'll allow just one more minute, and then we'll dive into things. Okay, I think we'll get going. So, as I said, my name is Nate Ward. I'm the director of the Export Assistance Network of the Small Business Development Center at Cleveland State University. I'm joined here by my colleague, Then Bowie. Then, would you like to say hello? Then and I are trade advisors, and we're really glad that each of you has had is joining us today for our program, our intro to doing exports. So today's conversation is meant to be just that, a conversation. I have here some information that I'd like to share with all of you. What we're going to cover are get you familiarized with so many of the different services and aids and really many of the programs that are designed to make doing international business easier for Ohio's small to medium-sized companies. I'll provide you with a couple of updates. There have been a lot of changes for some of you who may be familiar with a few of these programs, and perhaps you've even participated in a couple of them over the years. I'm going to give you the latest update on just where we are. And in fact, we're in a period right now where many of these programs have been greatly expanded or massaged or have grown into new offshoots. So I'm very excited to share with you all the possibilities that are out there right now for your company to tap into. But as is the nature of these programs, I want to make sure that this is one where this is engaging. If you'd like to unmute yourself or turn on your video at any point and raise your hand or ask a question, or if you feel more comfortable dropping a question or a point in the chat box, we'll be monitoring that throughout. So with that, I'm going to share with you my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see that okay? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about how Ohio helps manufacturers and service providers export better, doing more international business. And then after that, we're going to start talking about some of the different ways and scenarios that companies, especially when they're just starting out, the predictable kind of intro scenarios. And we're going to talk a little bit about our recommendations on what to do with those opportunities and how you can begin building that as a first step, or maybe a couple of steps into really ramping up international as part of your business. I normally start off with this next slide with asking, why did you come today? But I guess seeing that we're in a virtual platform, I'd like to ask the question, why did you log in today? So I'd like to do a little poll here. I'll give you my take on why most companies attend. Maybe some of you are curious about global trade and you're not quite there yet. You're representing a company where you haven't done international trade to this point. And maybe you're drawn here. Does anyone fit that category? You've had some experience with international trade. Maybe you fielded a few messages or a phone call, an email, an IM from someone from another country, and they said, we'd really love to have your product or maybe to have your service in our country. Maybe you don't even know where that message came from, but someone found you kind of out of the blue, and you either set it aside or you dabbled in it a little bit. That's okay too. Or maybe you're the company that's here because you have aspirations of becoming a global leader. And really, for any one of you, if you look at these different tiers, we're here to serve you. Whether you're just considering how to do international trade, if you're in the beginning stages of it and you think that there's some potential there, but you don't know how to build it and move it along, or if you're that company that has already been doing trade for many years. A lot of those companies end up being some of our strongest relationships because they're in the thick of it and they have a lot of different needs, real-time needs. But no matter where you find yourself, ask yourself which one of those places you stand. We're here to help you no matter what stage you're in that process. And who are we? We are the SBDC Export Assistance Network. You see here the contact details for all of our different colleagues. There's 9 of us across the state of Ohio. And if you're joining us from the greater Cleveland or Akron area, myself or Then would be your primary contact person. If you're joining us from a different part of the state, say Dayton or Appalachia, Ohio, or Northwest, these are the contact details for our counterparts. We know each one of these individuals, myself and Then. We speak with them on a regular basis, and we work collaboratively. And in some cases, we have different expertises, and we might even refer you to one of our other colleagues, depending on what your situation is or your industry is. We're really fortunate in Ohio. In other presentations, some of you may have seen, we like to share information and tout our success story that Ohio is a top 10 exporting state. On average, we do about $52, $53 billion worth in export in a given year. Sorry. Hey, Then, would you mind just monitoring the waiting room for me? Thanks. So we're really fortunate in the state of Ohio that exporting is a really huge part of our economy. And as such, we have one of the most robust support programs for any state when it comes to doing international business. And so I'm just going to share with you briefly the 3 major programs that are offered at the state level, of which our center is a part of. In the first case, we offer one-on-one consulting. So for all the different names I shared with you in the previous screen, we're all trade advisors. And so we each bring with us our own experience, our own expertise. I worked for 10 years in the private sector doing international business development and trade promotion with several different manufacturers in our area. So we can explain to you, whether it's something really minor, such as trying to fill out a specific form for customs, let's say, or just talking through the possibilities and potentials. You're eyeing up a particular market and you don't know, maybe where do you begin asking the questions? We're here to help you size up that opportunity, whether it's the big strategic picture or a very narrow question on documentation, let's say. One of the major programs that the state of Ohio, and I see we were just joined by Tom Bainbridge, who's the manager. He's got great timing. Thanks, Tom, for being here. We run something called the International Market Support Program. And this is one that has steadily grown since I joined the network about 8 years ago. I think at that time, we probably had, that was before Tom joined, something like 5 or 6 different markets that we supported. At this point, we're up over 80 countries. And if you're an Ohio-based company and you have an interest in doing business in Japan or somewhere in Africa or somewhere in the Gulf region, but perhaps you don't have a well-founded partner, or you're looking to grow your network, but you don't have anyone there and you don't have the ability at this time to travel to those markets to begin creating those relationships, This is something that's a free, it's a taxpayer-funded service, and it's one that we've been very active in connecting companies through this service to countries almost anywhere where they are. So, and I hope Tom doesn't kill me for this next slide, but this is something that we get access to on a quarterly basis of where those projects are happening. So I just want to share with you what, how active we've been. And in particular, you see here that Europe has been, and has historically been the most active market that we've done our projects in. But just recently we've added South America, the Gulf region, Africa, and Australia as other markets. And you can see that just in this past year, there's been an enormous uptick in the interest for tapping into those services. So over here, I include this picture on the right. So this is actually one of our contact. So John runs a company called Crush Proof in the Northwest. And he's meeting here with, this is actually one of our consultants who works out of Munich. And this is a picture that I took when we were at the Hanover trade show last year. So these are real people that we've hired. They're people that live in country, that know their market, and who are specialized in connecting partners for Ohio's companies. So it's a huge windfall that not every state offers something like that. The next program that I want to make sure that everyone is aware of is we provide companies with in-house help. And the primary way that we do that is through connecting companies with talented, up-and-coming students. These are students that we hand select statewide. On average, we have about 50 students that we select out of a very competitive process. We're looking for students that have a background in international, maybe they speak a foreign language or have lived in a foreign country before. Many of the times they have already some work experience under their belt. So these are students that are more polished, they're more job ready than the average student and maybe the average intern. So the benefit is that we connect them with companies maybe like yours, and the sort of the cherry on top is that the state of Ohio will offer a grant to pay for 50% of the intern's stipend that you may offer them. So here we, let's suppose that Fen was running a company and she was looking to do more business in France, but then doesn't speak French to my knowledge, and she thinks it would be really advantageous if someone on her staff could read some of the material that is coming out of that country. Well, there's a really good chance that we could connect her with a student who has that language capability and maybe even knows something about that country. And this is what happens every year. We put a lot of energy in the back end on the state side to get to know the students, to vet them, to get to know what your company is doing, what projects are you looking at, what countries are you interested in, to provide you with the match that's closest for you. Because of course, our hope is that we're going to create jobs. And I just want to share with you, this is just a snippet of a few of the students that have gone through the program in the past. To again, let you know that these are real students. They've worked at companies large and small, but for the most part, maybe they're companies just like yours, a company that you've not made the New York Stock Exchange just yet, and you're hoping to get there someday. But these are companies in our area that do a fair amount of international business, but could use a little bit of help in getting a boost in those foreign markets. Since we started this program in 2012, we've had 274 matches between students and Ohio companies. It's resulted in 63 internship extensions and 44 new positions. So I think this is just a testament to how often we get a match that's so good that the company says, we want to keep that student on board. They're a valuable asset to us, and we want to maybe even turn them into a full-time employee. And we're very grateful that our matches have turned out that way more times than on average. For those of you, there may have been a few of you who are part of a webinar that we did earlier today, and if you did, thanks for coming back. Just earlier today, my colleague Fen was running a program on e-commerce, and we were joined by Andrew Borst from the Ohio Development Service Agency. Andrew is the program manager for the International Market Access Grant, otherwise known as IMAGE. We've just celebrated our 10th year of having IMAGE funds to disperse, and this has really been a no-brainer. And I can't talk about this program enough, in particular because the time to really take action on this is right now. The IMAGE grant, for those of you who aren't aware, is a program that allows you to subsidize the cost of your international development projects. This year, it's traditionally been used for helping pay down the cost of participating in a trade show, maybe visiting a foreign market in some cases. building out your website or increasing your marketing literature, especially for your foreign prospects and your foreign markets. This year, because of obvious situations with travel restrictions, we've been able to relax a lot of the guidelines, relax the caps, with a heavier emphasis on digital advertising, marketing, and really trying to incentivize companies to take action now and to invest in trying to promote their international opportunities. So once again, you could receive up to 50% back on the expenses that you would pay for to do those market investments. You could get up to $10,000. And there's actually an added twist this year that for companies who haven't participated in the last few years, you may also be able to go over that cap and reach into funds that were allocated for years past. We can't do this by ourselves. International trade, I love international trade. This has been my career, my life, my passion. And one thing I really enjoy about what we do is we work with companies from every background, every ilk, every size. Many times they're manufacturers, but they could be in chemical, they could be in aerospace, they could be in, sometimes I don't even know what, I don't even know what technical things some of these companies do. We help a wide array of companies is what I'm trying to say. If you're based in Ohio, you have an interest in doing business internationally, we're happy to speak with you. But we don't do it by ourselves. We work with ourselves, our own sort of network of cooperators, and we've got great partnerships with the U.S. Department of Commerce. If any of you have ever worked with Sue Whitney, Todd Heiser, Amy Friedman, any of them, they are all really close. We work with them on a regular basis and even partner with them many times on the programs that we run. For companies that are using processed foods or your trade in agriculture, there's a whole different subset of programs that you could take part of through the Food Export Association, through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA. So we're happy to have that conversation with you to make sure that you are aware of all the different specialized programs that apply specifically to food products. Regionally, there's also an institution called the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers. And I'll share with you in a minute a few of the things that they're doing, but they're one of the major vehicles for trade missions in our area for general trade missions. And they've become great partners for us because they have wonderful contacts through many different countries around the world. I'll also throw in there the Ex-Im Bank of the United States and the U.S. Small Business Administration, especially on the trade finance portion of it. These may be names that you've heard of before. We also maintain relationships with both of those institutions. So I want to ask the question of why do companies need us? I think that there's a whole bunch of reasons. Companies turn to us when they need logistical help. It might be something as simple as, Nate, I'm trying to lower my freight cost, trying to ship something to Japan. Do you have any recommendations on how I might do that? Or do I need to be aware of something before I put this thing on a skid? Or do you have a recommendation for a freight forwarder maybe I could talk to? The tariff war. It seems to be something that's melted in the background somewhat with so much happening with the pandemic, but especially at the time when many of those new regulations and the new duties were imposed. This is also something we pay for services in the background to help companies understand and process what their duty is that they can expect to pay, and maybe even talk with them about if there are ways that they can reduce the overall amount or perhaps reclassify their product to reduce the duty, either they have to pay or their customers have to pay. Clearing customs, especially if you've never done it before, or if you've never sent a particular product to a new country before, we have ways of helping you anticipate what's going to be required, either to get your product out of the United States or into a foreign country, which that can vary even from country to country. You know, neighboring countries could have very radically different expectations of what it's going to take for your product to even enter into a new country. And that goes hand in hand with certifications, registrations, law, patent, all these items. Sometimes these things have an easy carryover if you've got these things figured out in the United States. Oftentimes they don't. And so it's our job to help you figure that out before you, hopefully before you start business in another country, just so you have a full picture of what are the possible risks. Why do companies need us? Because selling and shipping international is way different than the United States. Even when I was in private sector, and for many of the companies that I work with today, they're more successful when they've appreciated and they've made adjustments to how they're selling internationally versus just how they do business in the United States. And by its nature, international is risky. There are laws that things that don't cover you necessarily when you're dealing with a partner, when you're dealing with a financial transaction with someone that's not in the United States. They're not subject to U.S. law all the time, and so there is an elevated element of risk that happens. International can be expensive, whether we're talking about your personal travel there or the travel of your good. Um, the rule of thumb that I like to say is that in general, the further away something goes, the more expensive it's going to be to get there for obvious reasons. And it's sometimes very jarring, surprising when companies realize they see this is how much your product is going to be once it gets into market. That's an example we'll return to a little bit later on. However, international can be very financially rewarding. And I've seen this happen in my own professional experience of the windfall that you might be able to get by having international become a regular stream, a reliable source of income for your company. It could be a wonderful way of diversifying where your revenue is coming from, the base of your customers. And when you figure that piece out, it could be something that really opens up new possibilities for your company and really stabilizes your company as well. A couple of examples here that I just want to share with you. I can't share with you the names of these companies. This isn't all matter of public record, but there is a particular county, just to bring up an example, a company that's based in Lake County, and they were looking for a new fulfillment center in the European Union. And so they contacted us about that. And my center did the first round evaluation for them. And we analyzed based on where their customer base was, how many different distributors they had. They asked us to look at things like the time to market, how much it was going to cost in terms of the landed cost, the duties associated. And in the end, we helped narrow down to 2 different countries that we had reason to believe were really strongly positioned for them to be the location of a fulfillment center. And we turned it over to our friends, development service agency, and they ended up conducting the final search for a fulfillment center for those companies, for this company to place their fulfillment center. So this is just an example of the kind of work that we can do. It was a little bit a heavier job than what we normally go to, but we have the capability of doing that. There's another company that was in Stark County, and they were having some design issues. And this is just based on the fact that we know so many companies. Statewide, there's only several thousand companies perhaps that regularly export. In our particular region, it's estimated there's perhaps less than 500 companies that are doing serious exporting. And of those, we tend to know a whole bunch of them. And in this particular case, this is a company that was struggling to be effective in the European region. And so we introduced them to another company that we knew that had similar expertise, that had a lot of success in that region. And it was close enough that the competencies were pretty well aligned, but they were not competitors. And we introduced them to one another. And in fact, the picture that we're looking at here in the screen is the picture of the product that they redesigned based on the recommendations from this other company we introduced them to. And it immediately shot up in the same year to become their best-selling international product. We run a lot of different programs. And what I mean, I'm saying here at Cleveland State University for our region, and now really statewide, we run technical seminars, and I'll share with you a few dates of this upcoming seminars that we run that can be, focused on a real tight, specific topic. We held one earlier today about e-commerce that was in the same vein. We also run Ohio's longest running and most robust Export Accelerator program. It's a 9-month commitment. We pair you with mentors, and this is our opportunity to really work intimately with your company to take you from, maybe a real beginning stage of where your export is, and we want to find out what your goal is, and we throw every single resource. And in fact, oftentimes, all the different programs I've mentioned to you, we find ways of weaving those in at the right time to be able to help your company reach that next stage and building out a real sustainable export strategy. And then we also offer a professional development course called the Certified Global Business Professional Training. For those people who perhaps have never gone to school for international trade, you kind of want to have a deeper understanding of all these different topics. This is something that we offer twice a year. I'll stop here in a minute, but I first also want to share, this is something that's a timely program. At the top here, we have the dates for our upcoming seminars. Our Next Global Reach program is happening on November 5th. This is our operations, documentation, and transportation. It's entirely focused on really the transactional part of doing international trade. We'll talk about customs clearance. We'll talk about how to get paid. We'll talk about what documents you may need. as it applies to multiple different countries. On the 10th, we're running sort of the bookend program that we offered earlier today. Earlier, we ran a seminar with a company called IBT Online and Alibaba. On November 10th, we're going to have Amazon talk about their global platform. And that's a free program. We encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't already. And then in December, we're running a three-part series on how to manage a team virtually. And we're doing that in conjunction with one of our CARES Act consultants. And so this is a unique program that we're running on a sort of a temporary basis, temporary meaning for the next year. Our center actually has at our disposal funds that we have gone out to hire different consultants. And you see here the examples of the various consultants who are under our retainer. And for eligible Ohio companies, we basically will loan out these consultants to you, individuals who normally, are come with, in some cases, somewhat of a cost to them. Excuse me, but if one of these areas of expertise, cybersecurity, human resources, accounting and finance, or marketing, that's online digital marketing, any one of these points, we'd be happy to discuss with you how you can be lined up with one of these consultants, and they'll work on projects for you, and our center will pick up the tab for the work that they'll do for your company. There is a lot of groundwork being laid for trade promotion in the next year. So whether we're talking about Arab Health or MediLink Midlands in a cooperation with the city of Mentor, MedTech in Germany, there's something called Japan J Trade, or there's a couple of trade shows that are happening, between June and August next year. And we as a state are really hopeful to be aggressive in not only promoting and connecting companies with these opportunities, whether they're in person or virtual, but offering our assistance into helping you prepare for those opportunities. In some cases, there's financial incentives where we want to make it as affordable for you to participate in them as possible. And so these are all ongoing projects that we're discussing right now, but we want to make sure that you're aware that we want to aggressively position your company to take part in any one of these programs so that you can be front and center in front of potential buyers. This is just a snapshot from the Great Lakes St. Lawrence governors and premiers. This is one of our regional cooperators. Any Ohio company can take part in one of their trade missions. They are currently promoting one that's going to Japan and South Korea next year. But participation in this means that you'd be traveling perhaps with companies from around the Great Lakes states, and that organization would set up all the B2B meetings for you, and they take care of your itinerary, and it's really an enjoyable way, I'd say, of getting into market and also getting in front of those prospective buyers who are serious, who've been pre-qualified, and really making the most out of your time in market. I want to ask the question now, are you ready for export? You've heard me explain a whole lot of the assistance and the programs, and hopefully I didn't go through it too fast and your head isn't spinning. So I guess I want to pause here for a moment and see if there's any questions. So the question was asked whether or not they could get a copy of this presentation. Yes, absolutely. For everyone on this list here, we could give you a copy of this presentation as soon as we wrap up. And we're actually recording this presentation as well. And we'll edit it and post the link for everyone to view this webinar post-fact. Does anyone else have any questions for me before I continue? Please feel free to drop it in the chat room, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, I welcome it. Okay. All right, moving on. So let's talk a little bit about what are some common ways that exporting starts. In my opinion, there's a few ways that you see it happen, but I guess I want to start off with this notion that when you have something that's valuable, everyone wants it, right? That's why it's valuable. Lots of people are interested in it. They see that it's something that gives them an edge. It's something that brings them, some comfort or some efficiency, whatever it is. Oh, sorry. And so naturally, if you're looking for that export opportunity or not, when the word gets out that your product or your service is available, then people ask, can they purchase it? Can they incorporate it? Can they consume it? Whatever it is. And so that's why, we want you to be aware of what these opportunities are. It could be something that if you're maybe not proactively looking for it, this could be a great opportunity for you to turn this into an ongoing, viable, sustainable part of your business that eventually you might not have to put much work in on, and it could become a consistent revenue stream for you. And what we've seen recently is, I mentioned Alibaba before and Amazon, Tmall, eBay. There have been a cropping up of so many different ways digitally that companies can engage with foreign buyers. And there's even some real small companies that I know of that have tapped into some of these online platforms, and they've begun doing trade with the people all over the world without thinking twice about it. Oftentimes, when companies start getting inquiries from foreign buyers or prospective foreign buyers, is they might go through a search engine optimization. You retool your website, you maybe launch a new website, and all of a sudden it exposes you to traffic, or it raises your search profile when people are looking for whatever it is your offering is, and all of a sudden there's a new flood of inquiries that start coming into your inbox. Or it could be that you've participated in a trade show, and this is, of course, pretty obvious if you've been to McCormick in Chicago, or any of the major trade shows in Las Vegas. That inevitably those types of locations have been real great grassroots sources for encountering people from other countries. And so I remember the company I used to work for, there was a trade show manager, and he'd come back from someplace in New Jersey, and they just drop a pile of business cards on my desk, and he'd say, "Hey, these are all the people from outside the United States that want to buy our product. Can you follow up with them?" I started eventually going to those trade shows, but it's just a natural occurrence. And even today, if you're going to virtual trade shows, it's no different. You could still very well find yourself communicating with or IMing with someone that you find out is representing a company outside the United States. But that's obviously one reason why those trade shows exist. The last part is, you start doing some new advertising, whether it's a publication such as Export USA or an industry magazine. This is another way that people commonly come into contact with new prospective foreign buyers. I want to stop here and ask a poll. So I want you to tell me, do you already sell your product regionally or nationally? And in this case, I'm actually asking, for those of you on this call right now, how many of you already sell a product that's available regionally or nationally? Okay. Atmo says he sells nationally. Okay, great.
We do too, Gebauer Company.
Gebauer, yes. Hey, Doug. It's been a while.
How you doing, Nate? I'm doing well.
Good. Uche, is that it? Nationally? Very good. And I also see that you asked a question about helping market engineering services and training. Yes, as a matter of fact, we can. Oh, good. Do you already receive inquiries from abroad, from those of you that are selling nationally? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you. Yes. Have you created a strategy around your international business yet? That's really kind of the $1 million question.
Haphazardly.
Haphazardly? Okay. That's pretty much in line. So then all of you have come to the right place. In the process, not really. Okay, perfect. Then I'm so glad that all of you are in the right place, because you have the potential, that the opportunity is looking you in the face, but the next step is really trying to create a strategy around your international business. So, and then of course, selling internationally. And in some cases, you create the strategy and then you execute it through the sales. But I know that in reality, many times you start selling internationally if you're being approached by inquiries from abroad. So my guess is that, maybe we've already begun that process of selling internationally. Okay, in the process. Thank you, everyone. There's all kinds of resources I can point you to. And so far, this has been a recap of many of the resources that are available. One of the most comprehensive that's been put out there is the Export Business Planner. And the Export Business Planner is as a guide. It's I don't want to call it a Bible exactly, but it really is a comprehensive breakdown of, and it's meant to be a workbook on how you can get your business from that sort of opportunistic passive exporting to a proactive exporting model and how to develop an export plan. I told you earlier that we run the longest running export accelerator program in Ohio, and arguably one of the most influential in the United States. A lot of what we've built that around is actually this export business planner. So even if you want help stepping through the recommendations in it, but if you were to crack it open and read it, a lot of it's, the recommendation is start by conducting some market research. This is a huge area that my center, and perhaps some of you on the call, Neil, I know, can testify to some of the research work that we've done for his company. But a lot of it is, it's motivated by understanding what your market is, understanding where your customers are, and then balancing that with what is your ambition? How quickly do you want to move? How much financially are you willing to commit to the process? And then narrowing it down to those markets that are going to be the ripest opportunities. I think for newbies, many times companies that have not really done international trade before, and in particular, no offense to those that have done sourcing from China, there is oftentimes a kind of a misconception or at least an underestimation, I'll call it that, of flipping the script on China from being a vendor, a supplier, to then a customer. And I always caution companies if they've never tried that before, because it's a very different prospect going to China with a bunch of American dollars saying, I want to buy from you, and then turning around and saying, oh, well, we have a product we'd like to sell to you. So maybe that's right for you, but maybe there's also other opportunities that can be more manageable, can be a quicker win for you, a quicker conversion. I don't want to pretend that I know anything out the outset. So much of this is a case-by-case basis. But to give you an example, it's having that sort of that mindset that you're going to intentionally identify which markets you want to develop is the first key. Next, obviously, is finding buyers. In this realm, I think that there too needs to be some consideration. I'll go back to what I said before about first-time exporters. So often, your model in the United States, I know, is selling directly to your consumer. You have the ease of doing that, even though we live in a large country. We have a common language. There's common laws. There's similarities. Each state has its differences, I understand, but still, selling directly to consumers in the United States is not always like selling directly to consumers, even in Canada or Mexico or on a different continent even. So one of the most frequent things that we're doing for companies when they approach us is helping them develop what is going to be the mode of entry. How are you going to be able to handle that market directly, or do you need to have someone to cooperate with you? In my own experience, I used to work for a pretty robust manufacturer, and we already did direct sales across the United States. We even did direct sales to Canada. But when we opened up our office to do direct sales in the UK, it was 5 years before that office became profitable. And this is for a company that had hundreds of employees. We had a robust financial backing on this, but we couldn't turn a profit for several years. And so what ended up being a much more, and by the same token, we opened up distribution sales in Germany, and that center was profitable, within several months. So finding the right mode, finding, what is going to be the correct sort of orientation of, do you need partners in that country to help it make successful, or do you really have the wherewithal to supply that market, yourself directly? That's also a question that's worth kind of taking some time to pull apart. So in this case, oftentimes it's distribution. You could be working through a sales agent or even a licensing opportunity. So these would all be the kind of things that we would want to talk with you. And then, lastly, you export. So it's not to say that we don't help companies at times also find things like warehousing, or even in some cases to do some light manufacturing or to do some in-country sort of added value work in countries. We could also do that type of thing. But for the most part, where we perform strongest is when you're producing something that's from Ohio, made with Ohio parts, or at least at USA origin. You're trying to sell that abroad. So, the next part is to know your domestic market. It surprises me how often when we are tasked to do research assignments with companies, we'll ask them basic questions about who are their customers in the United States, or what drives a sale in the United States, and they don't know that. So if you haven't done this already, really you should understand what makes your business successful in the domestic market. Who's your archetype customer? Who do you have segments of who your buyers are? Who are the typical ones? Why do they purchase from you? Why do they not choose a competitor? All those type of questions. What predicts a sale here? What are the right set of conditions why they're going to want to buy your product or your service? And then it's after you've understood those things, we can start measuring and finding if there's similar conditions in another country. But if you don't know that already in the United States, then you really have to figure that part out. After that, you've got to do your due diligence on prospective markets and customers. And we haven't even talked about sort of the legal angle of this, but many times if we're talking about finding a partner and not just a simple customer, you might be in the long haul for them. You might be looking at them to be a partner for you in that marketplace for months or even years. And in fact, that's oftentimes what we recommend you do. So you're going to want to take some time and get to know them. List out your strengths and weaknesses of your products or service. You may not want to, or oftentimes we don't even recommend, don't go into it with your entire catalog. For all kinds of administrative reasons, for a litany of reasons, you may want to just select a subsection of what your services are before you go ahead and offer everything to any foreign buyer that comes up. So it helps you limit your focus, limits your marketing message. It can also limit how much you have to translate potentially, or create a whole new user's manual, or registration processes, all those type of things. It also, to consider the liabilities of on compliance or modifications. So find out, if there's a strong link or a weak link in your product offering. Why go international? Well, there's the obvious reason why anyone would want to do it is the upside for making money. That we as Americans make up 5% of the world's population, but we're 2/3 of the world's GDP. For the purposes of diversification, that you diversify your revenue pool. It might also diversify how you think about your products and your services that can be used. We say it's quote unquote recession proofing your business, and especially right now, so many companies that are struggling. We've been so very active with connecting companies with prospective foreign buyers. Foreign buyers are in some cases very eager and ready to begin relationships with new companies, particularly those in the United States. So our hope for you is that you could get up to maybe 20 to 30% of your revenue from foreign sources. It could be an inspiration for innovation in your product and your company. If you have that influx of a foreign perspective or foreign buyers, it really might expose you to, in some cases, how we're maybe not on the cutting edge. Your industry isn't being led in the United States. It might be led by somewhere else in another country. And honestly, it's a new global reality. Even if it's not something that you're proactively interested in investing your time in, your competitors may be. And if you're not at least keeping tabs on what's happening in your industry outside the United States, you open yourself up to maybe being backdoored by one of your competitors who gains some strength, gains some momentum in another country. They end up getting an influx of cash, and then they bring it back to the United States to make a really aggressive move to push out perhaps your company from the US. So it's the new global reality. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you at least a brief overview of what some of the risks are. I mean, there are political risks, and a kind of a fact of the matter is we like to say that trade is a privilege, that foreign governments don't have to apologize for making life difficult getting their products into their country. We've seen that especially with the advent of the trade tariff wars, whether it's our country or Canada or the EU or China, that in their eyes you're a foreign. You may not, your company, even if you have roots in that country, you have great relationships with people in that country. You might even say that people in that foreign government. I don't know. But there's a good chance that they're going to say that you're a foreigner and they don't owe you anything. Their politicians haven't been elected by you or anyone that you know. So they can make life hard on you. They could impose unfair measures or tariffs or taxes. So that's an obvious risk that we have to live with. They may intervene to freeze your assets or freeze currencies. That's happened in a couple of cases. Your intellectual property is not always protected, even when you have international patents. There are countries, I should say, that are signatory to international patent laws or treaties, but they don't do anything to enforce those laws, and the courts never favorably rule in the favor of a foreign company. So that's a possible risk. There's compliance risks. There's this idea of export regulations. The fact is that not everything that is made in the United States our U.S. government wants necessarily to go outside or to be sold to foreign parties. And you can imagine top of that list will be, military secrets and, bombs and, artillery and things like that. But you'd be surprised that just, if you go down the list, things that are, just sold to the military in general, there are some level of restrictions associated with them. And there's not an open door policy that you can go sell anything to anyone. And so it only pertains to about 2% of all goods, but for everyone else, we at least want to make sure that they're aware that there's certain countries that there are a lot of restrictions to do business in, beyond those that may just be obvious. There are financial risks, and at the end of the day, this is your company trying to do business with another buyer, perhaps in another country that doesn't maybe know you. They're gonna you might say to them, okay, well, we'll ship you the goods or we'll perform that service, but first we want you to pay us. And that's very common. That we call cash in advance. You're asking your buyer to pay before you give them anything, and you think, oh well, I'm secure. I know that I got paid. But what you're asking your buyer to do is you're asking them to trust you, and you're asking them to put their faith that after they make this deposit of whatever it is, $30,000, $50,000, that you're going to make good on what you're offering them. You're going to ship the goods, that they're going to arrive intact, on time, without any problems. People get nervous about that, and so there's ways also that we could talk about. How do you approach that conversation? Are there other ways of doing that? And the answer to the question is yes, there are. But nothing takes away entirely that nervousness that happens around making those transactions, especially the first time around. Oops. So, why I mentioned before about the research angle, and one of the major things that we do for companies is just that. We help educate them on what the status is of their industry, how that pertains to perhaps countries around the world or countries that they're targeting. And this is just one example that we'd like to pull out. This is from the organization COFAS, and so this is a report that gives you an idea for risk of credit default. And we're able to, in some cases, generate maps that show sort of heat maps on where industries are particularly prevalent or where they're growing and things like this. But this is to give you an idea of credit risk default. And as just one example of, if you're extending credit to a company in another country, these are facts that you should go into it with your eyes wide open before you agree to something. And we want to be able to put that information in your back pocket. There's other places you could go. There's something called the Opacity Index from the Milken Institute. There's the International Finance Corporation as part of the World Bank. They have an ease of doing business index. We rely also and highly recommend going to the U.S. Commercial Service. There are top market reports. There are country commercial guides you can read about, and they're written for a U.S. audience to give you an idea of what the perspective is for a foreign country vis-a-vis your industry. And then we in our center have access to multiple for-pay industry reports, and this is a snapshot of something we downloaded from Euromonitor, and we are at times able to produce real-time information, even forecast information for where an industry is headed, what's driving that trend, what's slowing that trend, whatever it is. And again, this is to make sure that you have an informed decision-making, in your background, not just relying on the conversation you had with someone that you met at the airport or, wherever. And as a last point, I want to share with you a topic that I brought up briefly before, the concept of what we call understanding landed costs. And so this is just a sample scenario of what can happen to a commodity. And let's just say a flashlight, I don't know, underwater flashlight. And suppose that you're sending this to the United Kingdom and you're selling this product to them for $1,000 US. Well, this is what happens afterwards. So there's an import tax of 12.5% that gets added to it. There's a VAT of 20% that gets added to it. There's a customs clearance fee, there's a documentation fee, there's freight charges, and all of a sudden, this is the price, $1,615, that your buyer in the UK has to pay just to get that product into their country. This is what we call the landed cost, the cost to clear it. Then they, in turn, have got their own fees that they have to pay, a warehousing fee, and their own employees. They need to make their margin. And so before the end of it, before you know it, the end price ends up being much more expensive for the end buyer. And this is not unusual if you've bought an imported car, let's say, especially if it's like from Germany or something, the price oftentimes is much higher than products that are made domestically. And that's just the reality of how oftentimes goods have an inflated cost when it becomes an export. So we both want to make sure that you understand what's going to happen to your product once it gets into that foreign market, what your buyer's perspective is going to be, whether they're the end buyer or they're an intermediate buyer like a distributor, so that you can make informed decisions about your pricing strategy, about how you can play a role in helping them be successful in that sale, or maybe even to make the determination, hey, look, in my mind, this seems like a slam dunk. This seems like everyone's going to want it, and it's going to be affordable for everyone, only to find out, oh my gosh, no, we're going to be way overpriced, and everything starts breaking down. And we don't want that to happen to you. We want you to be able to predict all those things before they happen. And so this is just a really simplified version of what we can do for companies to help them understand their competitiveness in terms of pricing. So my last question to you is, where do you want to go? What do you want to become? I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, participating in global trade and when you develop those relationships, I've had the great pleasure of being able to go to dozens of countries, through my work. And, maybe you could become a global icon like some of these locations, and you lift your business up to become that global player and the influencer around the world. And that is ultimately our hope, that, you reach that stage if you're not quite there yet. This is a link. These are a number of the links here for many of the programs that I share with you. And again, I'm happy to answer your questions now or open it up for discussion if anyone would like to ask me. Please feel free to drop a message in the chat if that's easier for you. Since Uche, is it? So I know you asked me the question.
Yes.
Yes, Uche?
Yeah.
So you asked a question about whether or not we can help with engineering services.
Yep.
Would you mind telling me a little bit more about what your company does? And
We do more operational excellence in manufacturing, and supply chain across, end to end. And we provide training, both basic manufacturing training up to intermediate and advanced. We help here in US, we help organizations, big and small, in terms of operational excellence, capability building, plan support, kind of project management, making them more efficient, more productive, and help them also deliver initiatives and projects better.
Great. And so I think that, in the chat you said that you're already doing this nationally, and
yeah,
you're offering this in. Yeah, go ahead.
Because we follow most of our customers, the big ones, we follow them across their footprint. We've done some stuff with them in Latin America, Asia, but they led that because they have sites over there, or they have suppliers over there that they want us to go help. But we've not gone out on our own to go do it.
Yeah, that's something we call that piggybacking. So especially when you've sold to, you have a relationship with someone based in the United States, and then they bring you internationally. So that's wonderful for you that you're getting that exposure and that you're also building a track record. But yeah, I'd love to have a discussion with you if you'd like on how we might be able to make that a more regular part of your business. But while it's not a significant, it's not an insignificant portion of our the clients that we regularly see that are in service providing. So it's a little bit of a different tactic, but I'd love to have that conversation with you.
Sure, I will. I think, do we have your info?
Yeah, I'm happy to drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
So I know I touched on a lot of different topics here. We talked about the grant that's available. There's an export internship program, which is we're almost done in the recruitment phase. Statewide, we have about 50 students, but we've opened up the application for any business that might be looking to host one of our students next summer. Our export accelerator program. So really any of the topics that I brought up, I'm perfectly happy to entertain any questions or curiosities about anything that I mentioned, or something that I didn't touch on that you're really hoping that I would talk about today. Okay, well.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Uche.
Do you have kind of database on what are the in-demand kind of products or services, maybe by country, by industrial group or something? What are the, given the situations where we're in today, with the, what's kind of the in-demand products?
That's a great question. And you know what, that's one that we get from time to time, and research is really the backbone of a lot of the counseling service that we offer. Short answer to your question is yes. The longer answer to your question is, if you're able to help us refine a little bit, because of course that could mean almost anything. We deal with companies that sell, apparel, accessories, and food products. And so, but absolutely, understanding trends and finding out what's in demand, whether it's we could find that information out for you directly or from several of the databases that we have subscriptions to. That's not difficult for us. But I would just say that if you're able to help us narrow down, like what industry are we talking about, what country, that type of thing, sure, we would regularly do that. Neil asked a question of if you can update the image grant activities after the application was submitted. Thank you, Neil, for bringing that question up. So the way the grant works, for those of you, and I think some of you on this call have applied for it before, the way that program works is that a company, in order to be eligible to receive the $10,000 or more for that grant, you need to apply for it before the expenses are incurred. So the application window is open now, and it will close on December 11th. And it's good for any expense that you might incur from now, or the day that you submit your application, I should say, until the end of September next year. And once you've submitted that application and it's been accepted, we want to be very flexible with you in modifying it. And if it's possible for us to amend your grant application to increase it to the maximum, and funds are still available to do that for qualifying activity, the answer is yes. And we will modify applications on a regular basis. But it is a competitive process, and if the funds run out, then that limits our ability to do that. But I would say that of all years, this is the year we find ourselves in the greatest amount of flexibility. We have, because so many trade missions and trade shows are canceled last year, we have an additional pot of funds this year that we're hopeful to also disperse. So long answer to your question, Neil, but the answer is absolutely yes. But the important thing is you need to submit your application first. There is very little we could do to help you out if you didn't submit the application, made an expense, and then later try to have us retroactively apply it. That's the one thing that won't fly. Thanks for the question. So if anyone else has a question, please drop it in the chat box, or if you'd like to unmute yourself. And I'll also say that for anyone who wants to stay on, I know that we're kind of getting close to our wrap-up time here, but I'll keep on the call. So if you'd like to not sign off immediately, I'd be more than happy to speak with you one-on-one. But if you do have to drop off and go catch up on your lunch or whatever, thank you again for joining us today. We'll be posting this video for you to watch afterwards, and we'll be sending out the slide deck for everyone to take home and to review. So thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. Appreciate you joining us and look forward to helping you out and getting you involved in some more of these programs.
Thank you, Nate.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.